Real life.
Hello
Uh,
there.
yeah, hi there. So, hi everyone, welcome to another coffee chat, and I'm really glad you're here. So, if this is your first time joining, these sessions are a chance to talk openly about actual things or major things happening in technical writing and developer content. So today's topic is one I think most of us need to pay attention to, and that is documentation automation, prompt design, and the role of LLMs in our work. So I'm excited because I'm joined by someone who's not just thinking, about these things, but actively building around them. Fabrizio Ferry Benedetti. Please correct me if I'm wrong with your
Yeah,
pronunciation. I
Fabrizio,
had
Fabrizio Ferri Benedetti, but you can call me Fabri or yeah,
Oh wow, nice. Because I had to check LinkedIn and I had to ensure that I was pronouncing it correctly. I had to listen
no worries.
over and over again for the pronunciation. So I'm glad I got it. So Fabrizio Ferri Benedetti, and he's a principal technical writer with over 15 years of experience across developer documentation, UX writing, and internal tooling. And fun fact, he proudly mentions that he loves the Oxford comma, semicolons, M dashes that almost everyone is trying to run away from now because of the AI era and the Bank. So we already know he's one of us. So I also love that you said know enough coding to be dangerous, and you often end up building your own tools. So like before we get into the main topic for today, what's one of the most random or unexpected tools you've built that turned out to be surprisingly useful?
Oh, that's a good question. Surprising or unexpected.
Mhm.
Well, perhaps this is a novel tool, really, but these days I'm using some tools called um, um, context tools,
Mhm.
which are EI LLM tools.
Mhm.
And what they do is essentially they just you provide a repo with all the documentation, for example, or all the code, and they
Mhm.
compress all that information in a file. And I'm feeding those files to say Copilot to provide like context for something. Like for example, if there is like a syntax guide for a documentation system or a markup language, I compress all this, all the available open source documentation on it into
Mhm.
this single file, with no spaces, nothing. It's just ready for LLMs.
Mhm.
And Copilot uses that as context, and then I can just say, okay, so convert this other content to this new format using the context here. And it's the most similar thing to, that scene in the Matrix where Neo learns Kung Fu, and they just plug a memory card, and all of a sudden he learns Kung Fu. Well, it's very similar. It's docs as data, you could call it,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it's surprisingly useful.
Hmm. Hmm. It definitely is. I actually love that you said docs as data. Did you just come up with that?
As data, not data,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
data. I mean
No, I
data.
think I think other folks have been using this.
Hmm.
It's just the zeitgeist, it's the spirit of the time. So
Yeah, I feel like
yeah.
docs as code is more popular than the use of docs as data. So I was like, okay,
Well, of
docs as
course, it's the pan is that is we all started with docs as code, so now it's finding
yeah.
new docs as something, and docs as data is very fitting.
Nice, nice, nice. Yeah, so I love that. I think that mindset is exactly what makes this conversation so important. So you're not just documenting how things work, you're shaping how tools could work with documentation and AI. So, quick question: what does it mean to own the prompt? So, in your recent post, I think you made last week or so, if I'm correct. So you said technical writers should own the prompt, not just tolerate LLMs or use them passively, but lead how they're used in documentation. So my question is, what does it really mean for a technical writer to own the prompt, and why is that mindset shift so important right now?
So it's this is kind of a poetic expression, but the what
Okay.
it conveys is two things. One is very practical, and the practical thing is that, for example, if you use Claude or GPT using the web UI,
Mhm.
the prompt is hard coded, is already there. GPT knows that it has to be useful and it has to write documentation a certain way.
Yeah.
And there are even tools out there that claim to produce documentation automatically from the code.
Mhm.
And they have like hard coded prompts that are very opinionated. as to how the documentation should be written. Like, for example, use bullet points or use bold, or which might or might not be of your liking or
Exactly.
might not be aligned with your style guide. In most
Mm-hmm.
cases, it isn't, because technical writers didn't create those tools.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea here is that um, the technical writer, should control the basic instructions or the fundamental instructions that the LLM will use to then process whatever request you send. So it's like it's before the actual thing you're requesting. Is like um, just like the base instruction, like you're gonna help out with this, you're gonna maybe use the actual command, for example, and then that's the base context that the LLM will have. The other
Mm-hmm.
meaning is a bit deeper and a bit more figurative. Is that by owning the prompt, what I mean is that the technical writer should be always in the loop of
Mm-hmm.
whatever development where LLMs and documentation are involved. I think there is no excuse for technical writers to disengage and just leave the engineers with this task. We should be there because words are being produced and
Yeah.
documentation is at stake. And designers would not leave the painting of the UI, for example, to an
Yeah.
LLM. They would be
Exactly.
there making sure that the output is as intended.
Mm-hmm.
And we should do the same, at least at the at the output side, at the very least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If we could, we could even get into the black box, edit the prompt, maybe fine tune the model, and we can provide the materials for that. We can provide the instructions for that. So then it's not rocket science. I think it's something we can do.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually not rocket science because I mean it took you 2 hours to put together Aikidocs, right?
Yeah, well, with the help of an LLM, of course, of
Yeah.
Copilot. But yeah, I mean, it's then I explained in a blog post the mental process I followed and the prompts I used. But it was just an experiment. It's a very simple one, really.
Yeah.
Perhaps what's interesting about it is that um, is an example of a tool made by technical writers for technical writers. And I think we have the tools to do more of this. We should be doing more of this.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. Hmm. So, talking about Aikidocs. So you built it under 2 hours using prompts and a clear structure. So can you like walk us through how you built Aikidocs, what you learned from the process, and how it shows what's possible when writers take initiatives with LLMs?
Well, Aikidocs started from precisely from this frustration of I saw this tool one day on Hacker News. I'm an avid reader of Hacker News. It's this
Yeah,
startup forum
yeah.
by Y Combinator.
Yeah.
And I saw this tool claiming to produce documentation automatically from code. And what puzzled me it was that documentation, of course, wasn't great, the output. So I looked at the code and saw that the prompt was not coded.
Hmm.
And it was like, look at the code and, then document these and these other thing and use the structure.
Hmm.
But that might serve the purpose of a demo or the author's liking for a certain style of documentation. But um, a technical writer would not use that tool out of the box for nothing.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I thought, could I replicate this? I mean, that was a proof of concept. Can I do something similar? That's very Hacker News. Hacker News thing to
Yeah.
do is to create a proof of concept and just post it there and say, show Hacker News and so I wanted to decompose what I knew were the basic steps, right? So Aikidocs basically is this tool where you have a folder where you put your prompt, and the prompt could be, for example, a style guide or basic instructions for formatting.
Hmm.
Then you put your context, and the context is any information you would use to create documentation from. Like it could be code, it could be other third-party documentation, anything really. And then, using those two ingredients, essentially you would just run the command and you get something out. So it's like it's leveraging the APIs, so it's not going through the UI as perhaps we are used to do these days.
Yeah.
And that gives a greater degree of control. And what's more interesting is that it's very simple to switch from one LLM to another, even a local
Another.
model.
Yeah.
And so you can compare the results.
Mhm.
So currently I'm using this tool to benchmark like the quality of the models in terms of
Yeah.
are they good at following the prompt I'm defining, the style guide, the recommendation, etc. And also like the performance, like the speed, for example, the output.
Yeah.
But these tools are I already see there are like 4 forks of the repo, and I strongly, I mean, the license is open source. So I
Exactly.
strongly
Yeah.
encourage exactly anyone can go just fork the
Can try
code
it out.
and
Yes.
yeah, create their own version.
Yeah. That's the cool part. So where should writers start if they want to try using LLMs for docs? So I know a lot of people are watching and are curious, but haven't touched LLMs or prompts yet. So what would you say a technical writer who wants to start experimenting, do they need to know how to code? What are some small but useful ways they can get started?
Well, yeah, so it depends on the kind of documentation, if it's developer documentation or they want to create software, not documentation. It
Okay.
really helps to have some some foundations of software development, like basic stuff. It doesn't have to be too complicated. And I think many technical writers already have those
Just tech
those
skills.
skills,
Mhm.
essentially because they got so much exposure to code already that they're documenting or development jargon. So
Yeah.
it's nice because you can with these tools you can code in just by talking in a way that is convincingly developer like, and
Yeah.
which is something that some folks call vibe coding. I think is just talking to the LLM. And the good thing is that writers are very skilled at putting words together, so we can sometimes produce very good output with these tools. um,
Exactly.
Another advice, well, so for documentation, first and foremost, especially if it's in a work environment, and I cannot stress these enough, make sure that you get permission to do so,
Mm.
because there are regulations at companies where there are already AI and LLM usage policies. So you want to make sure, even if this hasn't been brought up yet, if it hasn't, it might be a good time to reach out to your manager, to the legal department, and ask, look, I would like to do something with this technology. Is it okay? And at the very least, we can get the ball rolling and it can start a conversation. If you're already in an environment where you can freely experiment and you can, then I would say work on eliminating, the all sort of repetitive tasks um, or creating content that has is following like very structured pattern, for example. So there's much value for automation there. Oh, I think you're muted, Deborah. Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
no worries.
I said that makes sense. So like, it makes sense. The part of taking permission is very important. It can't be overemphasized. I mean, you don't want to
Yeah,
get yourself in trouble.
no,
So
indeed.
you may as well play safe. Yeah. So but I feel like I won't say most companies, I'll say some companies are like more open to AI these days. I mean, you can't run away from it. So some, not most.
Yeah,
So you
of
still
course.
have to be certain that there aren't any policies, or even if there aren't any set policies yet, they don't have like any reservations regarding that. Even if they do, maybe you can explain or rather advocate for what you're trying to do, so to make sense to them. And if it does
Yeah,
make sense, I mean, they could give you the go ahead, and if it still doesn't resonate with them, it's fine. I mean,
yeah.
yes.
Even at not just the legal level, but
Yeah.
the product engineering staffing level. It's good to show that you're experimenting and that you are interested in trying these technologies, or at least learning these technologies is a very obvious thing you want to signal. within the team. Essentially, I'm afraid that many tech writers will look helpless because they refuse to look at these technologies. They refuse to engage with these technologies, and I don't think that's wise. I think
Hmm.
um, even in order to really criticize the output, and I've done that. I wrote a post about the
Yeah.
limitations of writing docs using AI.
Mhm.
It's better if you have been there already. If you've tried this already and like have like a first-hand knowledge. Like you cannot rule out a tool before even trying it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, as more tech writers start playing with LLMs, it's easy to get overwhelmed or fall into the hype. And so, what are like the common mistakes or misconceptions you've seen when it comes to using LLMs for documentation, and how can writers avoid these traps? If I'll call them traps.
Yeah. So I think one problem is not having like a clear um, conception of where in your content strategy LLMs will fit, in the sense of LLMs are not intelligent. They are simply pattern recognition tools. They're very good at it, but they need two things. They need high quality inputs, prompts, guidance. It
Hmm.
has to be very consistent, and at least in my experience, because they have they have this tendency of steering away, and just sometimes they output random stuff, so you have to like be on top of them.
Yeah,
And then
very
the other
true.
thing is what I call like create these pens, these kind of like a pen where you have the LLM producing content in a very well delimited context. Like for example, if it's code samples, or maybe it's maybe it's like some admonitions you're creating, but you have to have like a clear idea of what you want the LLM to produce, and it has to be very well defined.
Yeah.
I think the biggest mistake is just to think that the LLM, you can go and simply ask it to navigate a complex doc structure and finding out ways of improving the documentation, but that's too broad. And
Exactly.
either because of the limitation of their memory, their context, or because of the limitation in terms of complexity,
Mhm.
LLMs are not great at navigating that much complexity. We are. So we have to find like the nice places, niches where LLMs can work for us, and just leave them there and generate their stuff. I'm oversimplifying, of course, but that's the general idea.
Yeah, it makes sense. I agree with the fact that you have to, you're the expert, you're the technical writer, you're the documentation engineer, you're the documentation specialist, whatever you call yourself. So you're the expert. You should lead the prompt. And I think that's the whole point of owning the prompt. And I think that's what it means to own the prompt. You lead the you lead the entire process. So you don't leave it to the AI tool itself. You're using the tool, you're leveraging the tool. So you should guide it. And that's the only way you can get the output you're looking to get at the end of the day. So that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And even if you're using it for something very basic, I feel like anyone using AI, if I think I'm about to bring something that has caused a lot of um what was I call it, uproar, what should I call it now, that's caused a lot of traffic, or I don't know, a lot of people have talked about it, AI taking the
Mm.
jobs of technical writers. And I had a coffee chat, I think about last year or so, on the topic about AI taking our jobs, and a lot of people attended the coffee chat because they were like, oh my god.
I
And
mean, yeah, that might happen because I mean, there are companies out there that have their own ideas on it, and
yeah,
they think it might sound very good to investors. They're finding out the hard way that that is not the case, that they need humans in charge.
yeah, they really do,
Um,
definitely.
yeah, but that doesn't mean we can feel like totally safe, or we can just discard LLMs.
Yeah,
I think this we can be at the very least we can be more productive, right? And
exactly.
like one simple use case is like like Markdown, for example, formatting. Like it's the amount of time it can save you just using Copilot and saying, reformat this table without these and these other element, and
Yeah.
it really halves the time you have to spend
It's
doing that.
manually.
And it's time we can better spend doing other things that are more human and noble, like content
Exactly.
structure, or thinking about like a new introduction for Doc, for example.
Or your like information architecture as well. Yeah, it
Yeah,
makes a lot of sense. So at the end of the day, AI isn't taking our jobs, at least not just yet.
part
AI is
part of
taking
them, part of them perhaps, but they are the
yeah.
parts that we didn't like. So
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. So at the very least, like Fabrizio said, AI is a tool that could probably make us, not probably, that would make us more productive if used effectively and if used the right way. So at the end of the day, you're using it as a tool to get the results faster. Yeah. So at the
right.
end of the day, companies still need experts in that particular field. They need experts, technical writers to own the prompt at the end of the day. So someone who's not a technical writer wouldn't know what to look out for, things to do and things not to do. So
Yeah,
yeah,
well,
exactly.
expertise is a little tricky because I mean, these technologies have existed for a couple of years in the current status.
Yeah.
So I doubt anyone I don't consider myself an expert. I doubt anyone can consider themselves or label themselves as experts.
Yeah.
What you can say is that you are a thinker, and then you are an explorer of these technologies, and you are open to using them. And
Exactly.
I think we'll in the next 5 years we'll see like real expertise, you know, um, surfacing from all these experimentation.
Yeah. hmm Makes sense. So, how did writers stay useful and creative in this AI era? So, like, if looking ahead, what do you think will make a technical writer stand out in the AI era? What should we hold on to, and what should we stop stressing over?
Um, so in terms of the knowledge skill set, I think it's nice to have, to show that you have experimented with AI LLM, for example. And if you're talking about software documentation in particular, it's good to, just show that you're experimenting with it, maybe to create a script, to create some kind of maybe some Python script to automate some docs operation using Copilot, and you can tell others like what your journey was with this process, and you can pin that repo on GitHub, for example. And GitHub is perhaps the most important portfolio uh, for you in the next years, especially if you are working in software and LLMs are a reality.
Yeah.
It's a good idea to curate your GitHub profile and have like, samples there of just experiments. It doesn't have to be, nothing impressive. Um, and your other question was about things we shouldn't stress too much about. Am I right?
Yeah. So, like, well, what are the things we should stop stressing over?
I wouldn't obsess too much over things like, as usual, like degrees, certifications, formal training. This is a field like most software really that is very open to experimentation and self-learning.
Yeah.
So it's way more important what you can show that you have done with these technologies than any badge or course completion, which is good. I mean,
Yeah.
courses are good, books are good, but they're not enough. You have to show what you have done with all this knowledge somehow.
Yeah. Exactly. I agree. That's very thoughtful. And to add, in addition to that, I would say build in public. I think that also applies to technical writing as well. So like one of the best ways to learn is to build in public. So if you're trying out a new tool, you're trying to apply this new technique, you can put it out on LinkedIn, say this is what I'm doing,
Yeah.
this is what I'm on, this is what I'm working on. And not surprisingly, you'd find a lot of people who have done that already, who have experience in that particular niche, and they would help out, and you can gain more knowledge than you would have gotten from, like, reading a book or going through some course. And there's something about using courses to learn things, like technical writing, or I think learn anything in general. It limits you to what the
Yeah.
tutorial master knows. So you're not even, at the end of the day, you should be able to experiment, try it out as much as you can use a course to learn. Be open to experimenting. And even when you're on a job, I love doing that a lot. I love experimenting, trying out new things, seeing what works, what doesn't. Yeah, I think that even emphasizes something Fabrizio wrote about today on LinkedIn in his piece.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, about
How to grow as
growth.
a tech
Yeah,
writer. Yeah.
how to grow as a technical writer. And I think he shared a lot of thoughtful pieces there. So you can check. I think it's still up on LinkedIn, so you can actually go through his LinkedIn profile and
Please.
see. Yeah. So yeah, it's very important to be open to trying out new things. Be dynamic, like Fabrizio put it. Be dynamic. Yeah. So
Yeah,
do you have any questions? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, just want to add so the important thing here is that the tech writing community, I think, in general, has had some difficulty sharing knowledge in the past.
Yeah.
Uh, except some, some pockets here and there, and some folks who have been blogging about a lot about the craft, like Tom Johnson and Bob Watson and others. But I think, again, it's a message that I keep repeating every year. I think we should be
Mhm.
sharing more, blogging more, just be out there more, and just talking about what we do, our craft, and what's interesting about what we're doing. And it can be very informative, and we ought to be more generous about our knowledge and our findings, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a very good idea. I think we spend more time writing about tools, writing about other stuff that aren't really related to technical writing. So at the end of the day, I think we should, yeah, I agree. We should pay attention to, putting out more informative content that could help fellow writers, like us. So we have one question from Zachary. He says,
Yeah.
or she says, sorry, I'm not sure if you're he or she, says, what sites do you recommend for having conversations on LLMs regarding problem solving, industry development, etc.?
Well, for technical writing, we have an AI channel in the Write the Docs Slack community. I
Yeah.
don't know if Zach is there already, and we have fairly interesting conversations there in real time or async. Then there's Hacker News, of course, and there's much to be learned only just by reading the comments on the posts. Like, you don't have to actively participate if you don't want to. Also, because it's a very tribal culture somehow, and it might be difficult to get it right at first. But even just lurking is a very good thing. And then there's a site and a newsletter that I like very much, which is I'm posting the link in the private chat here if you want to share it. But is the Simon Willinson weblog. He is truly an expert right now, and is I think he also does a great job at presenting information without hype. And I strongly recommend following maybe one or two of these newsletters to just stay abreast of the changes and what's cooking.
No, thanks for sharing. I shared the link in the comment section for anyone who wants access to that. So we have another question from Juliana Costa. I'd like to create a prompt or a doc system to revise the documentation in order to apply a style guide and other tech writing techniques such as active voice and minimalism. What do you think?
I think that's a very interesting use case. Of course, it's not. Do not expect perfect results because I've tried these myself. The LLMs, by definition, are non-deterministic. So, for example, if you compare it to the Veil linter, they will not always detect things. They will not always follow the instructions
Yeah.
verbatim, but you can get like a very solid approximation and a high quality one, especially when there is uncertainty, um, or when you cannot nail like a regular expression, for example. So you can go maybe for a mixed approach. And what I would recommend is before building a tool, I would recommend trying, for example, Copilot's agent mode. You can feed like up to 10 documents, for example, and say, sorry, just the camera went off.
Sorry.
You can feed up to 10 documents and in agent mode and say, for all these documents, these and that, and be very detailed about instructions. And a Copilot or Cursor or whatever tool you're using will start editing those documents, and you're able to see in real time the edits they're doing. So try that first, and that will help you refine maybe the prompt with whatever model you've chosen. And then once you've settled for a prompt that seems to work well, I think you could probably take the next step and create a tool that calls that API with that prompt over a set of documents and iterate on them to make the process faster. So it's like prototype first using agent mode, and then switch to a dedicated tool that calls the API.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Fabrizio. I hope you got answers to your question, Juliana. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to post them in the comment section. We're taking questions now. Yeah. Okay. So Juliana says, perfect. Thank you. So yeah. So any more questions? We're open to taking questions now.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to answer. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm just a tinkerer, but it's nice to have these conversations. So thank you again, by the way, Deborah, for inviting me to your program here.
Yeah, thank you for agreeing to do this with me. Yeah, you've shared a lot of. I feel you've shared a lot of thoughtful, information that we wouldn't have gotten over LinkedIn. So, so it feels good seeing you share it in real time.
Right.
Yeah. Karen says thanks a bunch. This was super helpful and interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so any questions? Fabrizio, do you have any other thing to add that we didn't cover?
Well, again, I can remind you of if you want to learn more about Aikidocs and how I built it, you can go to my blog, and there's a blog post there about owning the prompt where essentially I'm sharing the recipe I followed, and you can follow the same steps, and you can get a very similar tool. So it's like a do-it-yourself kit.
Awesome. So I'm going to share a link to Fabrizio's blog in a minute. So we have another question from Zachary. I think we all have experienced the hit and miss with AI results. Any suggestions on addressing that besides practice?
Well, not really, for a couple of reasons. One is that the models themselves are evolving and improving in theory. Sometimes are degrading their performance, unfortunately, like it happened with OpenAI a couple of weeks ago. So every week there's something new happening, and we have to like repeat a bit like the same steps. Perhaps the two advices I would provide about this is one is keep experimenting, like with the new stuff that comes out. Like don't settle for one model, because it's not the time yet to do that. Like one day Claude might be better than Gemini, and Gemini might be better than OpenAI. So we still need to be there and try things out. That will give us experience. The other thing is that out of this frustration, I would recommend that you use Copilot to build deterministic tools, meaning you can create tools that call LLMs, but you can also create tools that do things you need in a very deterministic way, like sanitizing some HTML or converting files from one format to another. And those tools are necessary too. They might not be as glamorous as calling AI to do stuff, but AI can help you build those. So maybe you have a template when you want to improve the styling of the docs, or you might want to publish the docs in another format or add a feature to your docs build system. Those are all things where LLMs can help you. So it's not always about doing things for LLMs with LLMs. It's also about doing things you need thanks to LLMs. So it's entering the software development world a bit.
I hope that answers your question, Zakari. Thank you so much, Fabrizio. Any other questions before we call it a day? So, any other questions? Okay.
Well, I guess if you post this on LinkedIn, Deborah, I can take questions also there later if you want.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure that works. Thank you. So, Fabrizio, thank you so much. This was such a thoughtful and practical conversation. I really appreciate you for walking us through how Aikidocs was built and the mindset behind it. And for anyone watching, you can check out Aikidocs on GitHub. I'll post the link in the comment section and sec. Yeah. So, and also you can connect with Fabrizio on LinkedIn. That's if you don't already have his connection. So I'm going to post that in the comment section as well. And so, if this coffee chat gave you something to think about, feel free to share it with another writer or drop a comment under the replay. So it's been automatically recorded, so you can come back and rewatch, and you can also share with your connections on LinkedIn or anyone you know would find this very helpful. So thank you so much for being here again, Fabrizio. Thank you for everyone who joined. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day or night wherever you are. So see you in the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.